Have you ever fallen deeply in love with someone who seemed to be the perfect person? A love that began like a fairy tale but suddenly collapsed into an unexpected nightmare? The truth is that many of us have lived this illusion, where passion turns into disappointment when the truth comes out. What to do when lies and betrayal destroy what seemed to be true love? In this video, we're going to explore how a summer romance can quickly turn into a nightmare and discover that often the pain of disappointment is the beginning of an unexpected path to personal growth and self-discovery. Get ready to understand how to face the truth and find the strength to move on.
The sun shone intensely over Cape Cod, and the sea breeze brought with it the salty smell of the waves crashing on the shore. Jimmy got out of the car with a smile on his face, his green eyes shining with the anticipation of the summer that was beginning. He had dreamed of that moment all year, and now, finally, he was there, in one of the most beautiful places he had ever known. The family house, a cozy wooden cottage, seemed even more welcoming under the golden light of the sun. "Come on, Jimmy. Don't just stand there. What are you waiting for?" shouted his sister Sarah as she ran towards the beach. Her enthusiasm was contagious, and Jimmy couldn't help but get carried away. He threw his backpack over his shoulder and followed her, feeling the warm sand under his feet. The sound of laughter and waves creating a natural symphony made him feel free, far from the worries of school and studies. The beach was full of life. Families gathered for picnics, children built sand castles, and groups of friends played volleyball. Jimmy sat on a towel with his family, looking around with a satisfied smile. "This place is amazing," he said, looking at his mother, who was preparing a fruit salad. "I already love it here." "Yeah, and you're going to love it even more when you meet the locals," his father replied with a mischievous look. "You know how the town's youth usually are." Jimmy rolled his eyes but couldn't help feeling a wave of curiosity. He was ready to enjoy every moment of that summer, especially if it meant making new friends. The afternoon advanced and the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was then that, looking at the horizon, Jimmy spotted a group of young people preparing for a beach party. He felt his heart race. "Do you think I can go there?" he asked, already getting up. "Of course, just be careful, okay?" his mother said, concerned. He nodded, promising that he would behave, and then joined the group. As he approached the party, the music pulsed and the smell of barbecue mixed with the salty air. He felt drawn by the vibrant energy emanating from the place. It was during the party that his eyes met Emma's. She was standing by a bonfire, her brown hair dancing in the wind and an enigmatic smile on her face. Jimmy felt as if the world around him disappeared. With his heart racing, he approached. "Hi, I'm Jimmy," he said, trying to hide the shyness in his voice. "Hi, Jimmy, I'm Emma," she replied, her gaze lighting up as she met him. "Are you new around here?" "Yes, I'm spending the summer with my family," he explained, trying to keep the conversation light. "And you? Do you live here?" "Actually, yes, but I like to spend time away from home," she said, looking at the fire with a melancholic smile. "Sometimes the beach is the only place where I really feel free." Jimmy felt an instant connection. "I understand. It's so beautiful here. It's like a dream." "It really is." Emma turned to him, and her gaze seemed to carry a mystery. "And you? What do you dream of doing? What's your big plan?" "I want to study marine biology. I've always been fascinated by the ocean and everything in it," he said excitedly. "And you?" I like art," she replied hesitantly, "but it's complicated. Sometimes it feels like I'm not good enough." "Don't say that. Everyone has their own talent," Jimmy replied, trying to encourage her. "You just need to believe in yourself." The conversation flowed naturally between them, and soon the world around them seemed to disappear. When the party reached its climax, they decided to move a little away from the loud music and the hustle. They sat on the sand, with the waves gently breaking in front of them. "I enjoyed meeting you, Emma," Jimmy said, feeling more comfortable. "You're different, in a good way." She looked at him, her eyes shining under the moonlight. "I also enjoyed meeting you. Sometimes people don't understand, but you seem different too." The two exchanged smiles, and the tension in the air was palpable. As the party began to wind down, Jimmy felt he needed to do something. "Hey, can I have your number? That way, we can meet again." Emma hesitated for a moment as if she were pondering something internally. "Sure," she finally said, as she typed her number into his phone. But let's see how things go. Life can be a bit complicated. Definitely, Jimmy agreed, feeling a slight chill in his stomach. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear. The connection he felt with Emma was unique and special. And for a brief moment, in those magical hours of summer, everything seemed possible. In the following days, the connection between Jimmy and Emma intensified as they explored the beauties of Cape Cod, each corner becoming a perfect setting for the blossoming of a young and intense love. With his eyes shining with enthusiasm, Jimmy took her to small cafes and hidden beaches where they could exchange laughs and stories. It was a summer of discoveries, but there was something about Emma that intrigued him. Her beauty was undeniable, but there was a shadow that seemed to follow her. One afternoon, while they were walking on the fine sand of the beach, Jimmy decided it was time to know more about the girl who occupied his thoughts. "Emma, you've never talked much about your passions. What do you really love to do?" He watched her, hoping she would open the door to a world he didn't yet know. Emma hesitated, looking at the horizon where the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in orange and pink. "I like art," she finally replied, her voice soft but with a tone of reluctance. "I paint, I sculpt, it's a way to express what I feel." "Wow, I'd love to see your works one day. Do you have a place where you usually exhibit?" Jimmy asked, excited. She looked away, her smile fading a little. "No, it's not something I do. Not now," she replied, the evasion in her voice noticeable. "I have some things stored, but I'm not good enough." "Don't say that. I'm sure you're amazing." Jimmy was determined to encourage her, but Emma just shook her head as if she didn't want to continue the conversation. The change of subject was palpable, and he decided to respect that silence, even though he wanted to break it. In the following days, the atmosphere between them was of pure joy, but Jimmy couldn't ignore a certain underlying tension. On a sunny afternoon, while they were sitting on a wooden deck, Emma received a call that visibly made her nervous. The tone of her voice changed instantly. The lightness that had once surrounded her was replaced by an air of concern. "Emma? Are you okay?" Jimmy asked, his unease growing. She hesitated, looking at the phone with a mix of anxiety and fear. "Yes, it's just a family thing," she said without looking him in the eye. "You can tell me. You know I'm here for you," he insisted, trying to convey comfort, but Emma just shook her head, closing herself off even more. "No, it's complicated. I don't want you to worry about it," she replied, her voice trembling. Jimmy felt a chill in his stomach. Something was wrong, very wrong. He wanted to understand, but Emma's resistance left him anguished. The day, which should have been perfect, was marred by an invisible cloud that hung over them. After a few hours of superficial conversation and forced laughs, it was time to say goodbye. The stars began to shine in the sky, reflecting the moonlight on the calm water. Jimmy turned to Emma, feeling that the chemistry between them was about to explode into something more intense. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, hesitant, his heart racing. She looked into his eyes, the hesitation evident on her face. "Jimmy, Emma began, but the sentence was lost in the air. When he leaned in, she pulled away in a way that left him confused. "Why not?" The question slipped from his lips before he could contain it. The disappointment filled his chest. I'm not ready," Emma said, her voice low but firm. Her gaze was distant, as if she was struggling against something Jimmy couldn't understand. "I don't want to pressure you. I just thought that Jimmy hesitated, frustration growing. "I thought we were getting along." "We are, but my life is more complicated than you can imagine," Emma confessed, finally looking at him with an expression that mixed pain and vulnerability. "I just need more time." Jimmy felt a knot form in his stomach. He wanted to help her, but the barrier she had built was impenetrable. "Okay, Emma, I just want you to know that I'll be here when you're ready," he replied, trying to hide the sadness in his voice. She smiled, but it was a sad smile, a mask over something he couldn't reach. "Thank you, Jimmy. That means a lot to me." With one last look, Emma walked away, and Jimmy stood on the sand, watching her disappear into the dusk of the night, his mind spinning around the unspoken words and unfulfilled promises. The summer had begun like a fairy tale, but now the feeling that a deep mystery surrounded Emma left him uneasy. He didn't know what was to come, but one thing was certain. He couldn't give up on her so easily. Jimmy walked through the streets of Cape Cod, the sun shining brightly on the sand, but his mind wasn't on the natural beauty around him. He was worried about Emma. With each passing day, the connection between them grew stronger, but the secrets she carried left him restless. He needed to understand more about her life, even if it led him to a place he didn't want to visit. Curiosity led him to a small cafe, where he usually went to study and have an iced coffee. While watching the customers, his mind wandered. He decided he needed to know more about Emma's family. With a little luck, maybe he could find something that explained her hesitation. After a quick search on the internet, Jimmy discovered that Emma's family had a history of financial problems and constant conflicts. The news was full of reports of family disagreements and complicated situations that made it clear that things had never been easy for her. That same afternoon, he met with a friend, Tom, who was also spending the holidays in town. They were sitting on a bench, watching the sunset, when Jimmy decided to bring up his concerns. "Tom, you know Emma, right?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Of course, the girl from the cafe and the beach," Tom replied with a smile on his face. "She's well known around here. Why do you ask?" Jimmy hesitated for a moment, but anxiety pushed him to continue. "I feel like there's more to her than she lets on. What do you know about her family?" Tom frowned, thoughtful. "Well, I've heard some things. It seems her family isn't exactly the most respectable in town. There's a history of problems, you know? Involvements with debts, fights, nothing good." Problems? The word echoed in Jimmy's mind. He didn't want to believe that Emma was trapped in such a complicated situation. "Do you know anything specific?" "I've heard a rumor that her father was involved in some shady schemes. Nothing I've seen personally, but people talk. It's kind of sad, actually." Tom looked at Jimmy, noticing the worry on his friend's face. "Why are you so interested?" I care about her. There's something that troubles her, and I want to help, but I don't know how." Jimmy's sincerity surprised even himself. He had never felt so protective of someone. "Well, maybe you should talk to her. Sometimes being open can be the best way to help her," Tom suggested, taking a sip of his drink. Jimmy took a deep breath, knowing he needed to face his doubts and concerns. He decided that in the next meeting, he would confront Emma about what he had discovered. The next day, while they were walking along the beach, the sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky in orange and pink. They talked and laughed, but Jimmy's mind was agitated. He turned to Emma, his eyes searching for the truth he knew she was hiding. "Emma, can I ask you something?" He hesitated, but the urgency forced him to continue. "What's going on with you? I feel like there's something you're not telling me." Emma looked at the sea, her eyes reflecting the light of the setting sun. "Jimmy, I don't know if it's the right time for this." Her voice was tense, and Jimmy realized she was closing off. "Please, I just want to understand. What are you hiding from me?" The frustration and concern in his voice were palpable. She took a deep breath, her gaze still fixed on the horizon. "I can't talk about my family, about what's going on. It's too complicated." "Complicated how? You can trust me, Emma. I'm here to help you." He stepped closer, trying to reach the part of her that was hidden behind so many barriers. "You don't understand, Jimmy. I'm running away from things you can't even imagine, things that could put you in danger." The desperation in her voice made Jimmy's heart race. "Danger? What are you talking about?" The need for answers was intense, and he was willing to face whatever it took to protect her. Emma turned to him, her eyes full of tears. "Because I'm running away from an abusive relationship, and that's not something simple to solve." Jimmy felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. The revelation hit him hard, and he realized that her battle was much more complex than he could have imagined. He desperately wanted to hug her, to protect her from everything, but he also knew he had to respect her space. "Emma, I didn't know," he began, but the words failed. "I don't want you to go through this alone. I'm not alone, but I can't drag you into this. You deserve something better." The determination in her voice was clear, but Jimmy refused to accept it. "I want to stay by your side, Emma. Let's face this together." The sincerity in his words seemed to break down some of her resistance, and he hoped she could see how much he cared. The sun was slowly setting on the horizon, painting the sky in orange and pink hues that reflected off the calm waves of the sea. Jimmy walked along the beach, his bare feet sinking into the warm sand, while his heart pounded with the presence of Emma by his side. It was the first time they had the chance to be alone in such a romantic setting, away from the distractions of the world. The atmosphere carried a mix of expectation and anxiety, and Jimmy knew it was the right moment to open his heart. "Emma," he began, hesitating for a moment, "I want you to know that I'm here to help you. No matter what happens, you don't have to face this alone." She stopped and looked at him, her deep eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and fear. "Jimmy, I appreciate that, but you don't know what you're talking about. My past is complicated, and I don't want you to get hurt because of me." "I've already been hurt seeing you suffer," he replied, the sincerity in his voice almost tangible. "Please, let me in. I want to understand what's going on in your life." Emma took a deep breath, the internal struggle evident in her expression. "It's just that my family, they have expectations that are impossible to meet. Everyone is always expecting me to be perfect, but I just want to be myself," she murmured, her eyes getting lost in the waves. "You're perfect just the way you are," Jimmy affirmed gently. "And I want you to know that I believe in you. You have an incredible talent as an artist. You should follow your heart, Emma." She smiled timidly, but the shadow of her problems still hung over them. "Sometimes, I feel like I'm trapped, like I'm in a cage, and what scares me the most is that I don't know how to get out." "You're not alone," he insisted. "We can figure this out together. Let's plan a future where we can be free, a place where you can create without fear." Emma looked at him, surprised by the determination in his eyes. "A future? Do you really believe that's possible?" "I believe," Jimmy said, taking her hand. "Now, tell me more about your art. What would you like to do if there was nothing holding you back?" She hesitated, but the passion began to shine in her gaze. "I've always dreamed of having an exhibition, to paint and show the world what I see through my eyes. But the pressure from my family, they wouldn't understand. For them, art isn't a viable career." "Then let's do it together," he proposed. "Let's find a space, and you can exhibit your works. I'll support you every step of the way. We can make this happen." Emma's eyes lit up, and a genuine smile appeared on her lips. "Do you really believe I can do this?" "With all my heart," he assured. "And if necessary, we can find a way to deal with your family. I don't want you to feel trapped by anything. You deserve to be free." "If I could, I'd do it right now," Emma replied, her voice full of emotion. "But what if they find out? I don't want you to get hurt because of me." "I'm willing to take that risk, Emma, because you're worth it," he said, the sincerity filling the air between them. "We can find a way to face this together." Emma looked at him, and for the first time she felt a wave of hope. "And if they don't accept? And if all this ends badly?" "If it ends badly, we'll face it together," he affirmed, holding her hand firmly. "I'm not going to leave you alone." The wind blew softly, bringing with it the salty smell of the sea. Emma felt that, for the first time, there was someone by her side willing to fight for her. And with that, a new determination began to take hold of her. "Okay," she agreed, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Let's do this." As they walked along the beach together, they began to dream out loud about the future. A life where Emma could freely express herself through her art, away from the stifling expectations of her family. Jimmy described a studio by the sea where the walls would be covered with her vibrant paintings and where every brushstroke would be a step toward freedom. "I imagine a place where you can be yourself without judgment," Jimmy said, excited. "A place where I can be me, and you can be there with me," Emma agreed, a smile of excitement growing on her face. And so, as the sun disappeared on the horizon, they felt more connected than ever, facing together the challenges that were to come. The journey was far from over, but in that moment, they knew they had each other, and that was enough to face any storm that lay ahead. As they walked along the beach, the sun set on the horizon, painting the sky in orange and pink. Jimmy and Emma talked about everything and nothing, the soft summer breeze wrapping them in a moment of tranquility. However, the light atmosphere was interrupted when Emma suddenly looked at the phone vibrating in her pocket. Her expression changed, and the tension filled the air. "Emma, are you okay?" Jimmy asked, noticing the sudden change in her body language. He stepped closer, but she pulled away a little, as if trying to protect herself from something threatening her. "It's just a message," Emma replied, her voice trembling. "Nothing important." "It doesn't seem like that. You're pale." Jimmy insisted, worried. "If something's bothering you, you can tell me." She hesitated, looking at the ground as if the words were stuck in her throat. "It's not what you think. I just need some time." "Time? Emma, you're pulling away from me. What's going on?" Jimmy's frustration began to show. He didn't understand why she couldn't just be honest. The sea breeze picked up, and the sound of the waves crashing behind them seemed to echo the growing tension. Emma took a deep breath, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "You wouldn't understand, Jimmy. This isn't just about us." "Then explain it to me. I want to understand." He felt his heart race, suspicion taking hold of his thoughts. "If you don't tell me, I'll think you're hiding something very serious." "Maybe I am," Emma replied, her voice low, almost a whisper. "But I can't involve you in this. I don't want you to get hurt because of my life." "Hurt? Emma, I've already been hurt just seeing you like this. Please don't leave me out." Jimmy was about to explode. The thought of Emma fighting alone was unbearable. "You don't know what you're asking," she said, her voice now full of emotion. "My family, they're involved in things you can't imagine. I'm trying to get away from that." "Things like what?" Jimmy pressed, his curiosity mixed with concern. "If you don't tell me, I won't be able to help." Emma looked away, her eyes lost on the horizon. "They're illegal businesses, Jimmy, dirty money, and I'm trapped in it one way or another. I need money to get away from them and the relationship I'm in, but I can't just disappear. They won't stop." Jimmy felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. "Are you saying your family is involved in illegal activities? This is serious, Emma." "I know," she replied, her voice now sounding desperate. "And I don't want you to get hurt because of it. I just wanted this summer to be perfect, but now it feels like everything is falling apart." "Emma, we can't let this separate us," Jimmy said, trying to calm her down. "If your family is causing this kind of pain, then we need to find a way to deal with it together. We can't let fear dictate our lives." She looked into Jimmy's eyes, seeking comfort, but also questioning the reality of his words. "And if they don't let us? What if I can't get out of this?" "I'll help you, I promise. But you need to trust me," Jimmy said, his gaze firm. He took her hand, holding it tightly. "We'll face this, one step at a time. You're not alone in this." Emma felt the determination in his words, and for a brief moment believed they could escape that dark situation. But doubts still lingered in her mind, like shadows that refused to disappear. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but perhaps, just maybe, with Jimmy by her side, they could find a way out. Jimmy took a deep breath as he approached Emma's family's imposing house. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in orange and pink, but he barely noticed the beauty around him. His mind was too occupied with the determination to help Emma escape her father's oppressive influence. He knew the situation was delicate, but the urgency to do something drove him. Upon entering the vast entrance hall, the echo of his footsteps resounded in a space that exuded power and opulence. The walls were adorned with modern art paintings, and the refined furniture reflected a lifestyle that seemed distant from the reality Emma lived. Jimmy hesitated for a moment, but was soon met with a penetrating gaze. Emma's father, a middle-aged man in an impeccable suit, was sitting in a leather chair, looking completely at ease. His dark eyes observed him with a mixture of disdain and curiosity. "What are you doing here, boy?" the man asked, his voice low and threatening. Jimmy swallowed hard, trying to gather courage. "I came to talk about Emma," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "She needs help, and you're not doing anything to help her." The man let out a sarcastic laugh that echoed through the space like thunder. "Help? You think you know what's best for her?" He slowly stood up, approaching Jimmy. "You have no idea what you're talking about. I know Emma, and I know she's suffering. You control and manipulate her. That's not love," Jimmy replied, feeling the tension increase. Emma's father's expression changed, the disdain turning to anger. He moved closer, almost cornering Jimmy. "You have no idea what it takes to keep a family together. Don't come to me with your moral lessons, boy. Emma is my daughter, and I know what's best for her, he said, his voice laden with authority. At that moment, the door creaked open, and Emma entered, like a ghost in her own house, her gaze fixed on Jimmy and then on her father, who was clearly furious. "Dad, I don't want this anymore," Emma exclaimed, her voice trembling but full of determination. "I can't live under your control. This isn't life for me." Her father stared at her, his expression a mix of surprise and fury. "Emma, you don't know what you're talking about. You need me. Without me, you're nothing," he replied, but the firmness in her voice was breaking down his defenses. "No," Emma shouted, now more confident. "I'm not what you say. I'm more than your property, and I won't allow you to control my life anymore." Jimmy felt a wave of hope. Emma was finally standing up to her father, and he felt strengthened by her courage. He took a step forward, standing by her side. Emma is a talented artist. She has dreams and deserves the freedom to pursue them. "You can't keep threatening her," Jimmy said, his voice now firmer. Emma's father looked at Jimmy, the disdain in his gaze turning to a fury that seemed ready to explode. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, boy. The world can be very cruel to those who cross my path." But before the atmosphere became unbearable, the sound of sirens began to echo from outside, growing in intensity. Emma's father's expression changed from anger to panic. "What have you done?" he shouted, looking at Emma with an expression of betrayal. "I didn't do anything, Dad. You're being investigated, and I'm not going to stay here to see you destroy my life," Emma declared, her determination now unshakable. The doors opened, and police officers entered, ready to act. Emma's father tried to argue, but it was too late. Jimmy felt relieved to see that the police had arrived. Emma looked at him, her eyes shining with gratitude and hope. "Let's go, Emma," he encouraged, holding her hand. "It's time for you to be free." With the help of the police, Emma's father was taken away, and the tension that hung in the air began to dissipate. Emma and Jimmy left together from that house that had been a prison for her, feeling lighter with each step. "Thank you for being by my side," Emma said, her eyes full of tears of relief. With the help of the police, Emma's father was taken away, and the tension that hung in the air began to dissipate. Emma and Jimmy left together from that house that had been a prison for her, feeling lighter with each step. "Thank you for being by my side," Emma said, her eyes full of tears of relief. "Always, Emma. Now, we can finally move forward and build the future we deserve," Jimmy replied, looking into her eyes, feeling that, together, they could face any challenge that lay ahead. Sometimes, the truth can be a brutal shock, especially when it comes after a romance that seemed perfect. But how do you deal with this kind of revelation? The pain and disappointment can be immense, but they are also opportunities for deep introspection. What was the impact of this experience on your life? How can you use this pain to strengthen your resilience and turn your challenges into valuable lessons? Think about how you can grow from these difficult moments and find a new path. If this story touched you in some way, check out the video that's appearing on your screen now. In my opinion, this is one of the best stories I've ever told. If you liked what you heard now, you'll definitely love this other story too. So subscribe to the channel, click on the video that's on your screen now, and I'll see you in a few seconds.